Welcome to the second in our leadership series. My name is John Brody. I'm a senior executive at Mac Consulting, and today I'm going to be talking to Dr. Jan van Niekerk, who leads our digital capability at Mac. Jan is going to be sharing with us some of his insights into implementing and leveraging people analytics and data to drive a more engaged and effective workforce. So Jan, I think in the modern economy, we all know that data is the new gold. And I think leaders are faced with lots of data that's being put in front of them every day and that they're trying to make sense of. But why is people analytics such an important component and data set to focus on?
Thanks, John. Good question. I think a large part of what we've seen pre-pandemic, post-pandemic has been shifts in how employees look for employers, how they search for job opportunities, look for things, for example, salaries, opportunities, study opportunities, right fit for culture. And as an organization, for you to unpack what makes your organization, I don't want to use the term lucrative, but perhaps more attractive to potential candidates, is you need to understand what drives specific behaviors. And once you start to collect some data analytics around behaviors inside the organization, it makes it a little bit easier for you to manage things, for example, like attracting talent, retaining talent, growing talent, but then also ultimately focusing around how can we actually leverage and direct those insights from that workforce into developing a more productive and a more enticing organizations for future employees.
Yeah, awesome. And that makes a lot of sense to me, Jan, because we often use the term people are our most important asset. But I think what I'm hearing from you is that actually the more you understand about your assets, the more you're able to engage and be informed about what's driving their choices, their behavior, the better you can behave as a leader and better you respond to those choices. I'm thinking that when I look at our clients, often the people analytics space is lagging behind many of the other areas. What do you think is the biggest reason for that?
John, I think from my experience, the human capital, human resource division is often the most, I'm going to use the term, digitally neglected capability or division inside most organizations. And they often neglect it because HR is seen as this reactive type of department. A Jan has done something wrong inside the organization and now I get summoned to HR. That's kind of reactive type of behavior. And so when an HR division or a capability typically wants to start to leverage data analytics or grow the insight into the workforce, they often have to share resources with other departments. And so, for example, a typical issue we see with human capital executives is that they don't have access to, for example, data analysts, data engineers, just general IT support. And so often when they're sitting around the big boy table or having these large conversations, it's more seen as a nice to have as opposed to a must have.
And I think that makes a lot of sense to me because I really like the point you make about HR being reactive and not necessarily proactive. I think that shift for HR becoming more of a strategic function and more of a proactive driver of business performance is kind of the key step change that needs to happen in the realization. So I think that point around making that shift and why we haven't invested in that capability is quite a key one. What are some of the pitfalls then that you've seen clients make in implementing or building this capability within their business?
So I think often in general, organizations get disillusioned by fancy areas or concepts like digital transformation, 4AR, artificial intelligence, machine learning. We want these fancy bells and whistles, but fundamentally we don't have the data maturity to actually implement that. And so often when I have people analytics-based conversations, I use the analogy, what I call the sit, crawl, walk, run principle. And essentially what that means is, just to spell it out, obviously it's sit before you crawl before you walk before you run. What that transcribes to from a people analytics perspective is to say, if you don't have basic clean data or a basic BI dashboard, just to start to be descriptive in your data, I think asking for a machine learning solution to predict when an employee is about to churn is a tall ask. So fundamentally, it's let's focus on the basics first, get the basics in place. That would be data maturity, data quality. And then as we grow and mature, we can become more advanced in our analytics that we look at.
I think that's sound advice, and I think in terms of laying a foundation and getting your basics right. But obviously, a lot of what we see are some of the really exciting things that different organizations and leading organizations are doing around creating those insights and how they're using analytics to really drive that proactive and predictive engagement with employees. Can you share some of the kind of exciting things that you've seen coming through and that you potentially have been working on?
Definitely, John. So when we think about some of the exciting projects that we can develop and leverage from a data perspective and that we have developed and implemented, we have the conventional data science machine learning approaches, for example, in organizations wanting to predict churn, i.e. when an employee is about to leave. We've got organizations that want to predict when an employee is about to get to a mature point where they can potentially get a promotion. And those are perhaps more conventional use cases, right? The same would apply for absenteeism, being able to predict when an increase in absenteeism is about to take place. What would be perhaps considered a bit more advanced in the space is looking at, for example, machine learning applications where organizations are looking to completely transform the way they recruit. So a nice prime example of that would be if, for example, we were to look at a logistics company that wants to hire a truck driver, they would want to find ideal characteristics of what makes a good long-term employee. And based on those ideal characteristics we can identify, we can actually take that into the screening process from a CV perspective. So from a data and a mature analytics and machine learning perspective, we can actually influence the recruitment process to reduce unnecessary costs, but also make sure that the people that do get hired end up spending a long time in the organization. Now, obviously, that has got a two-pronged approach. Staying long in an organization doesn't mean you're going to be productive, you're going to get the promotions. So there's a bit of a fine balance between also leveraging the data to drive specific insights, but also some intuition or organizational, institutional insights that have to kind of get combined.
I think that's, thanks, Jan, and I think very exciting space we're working in, right? And I think we're going to see massive growth over the next few years in this space. I think if you're sitting in the human capital function, you're an HR director, you've been put in charge of management information in HR, systems implementation, managing the HR systems that have been implemented, and you want to start maturing or evolving your analytics capability, really your ability to leverage the data you've got and drive more proactive engagement. Where do you think you start beyond trying to understand just where you are in that maturity cycle as you shared? Where do you start?
It starts off by asking the right question, John. And what that basically means is don't go away or take away from this conversation that I have to now go build this massive data system and build some analytics capability. Start off by picking a business challenge. So let's say, for example, your challenge is absenteeism in your organization. If that's your challenge you're trying to solve, that's the right question to ask. Then go say and take the next step is, what type of data can I go and collect or extract from the organization in order to help me unpack and better understand this absenteeism problem? That could, for example, be going to your IT capabilities and ask them to extract data from, example, SuccessFactors, Workday. There might be some time and attendance systems that we can extract data from, and then start to analyze and come up with a hypothesis. What is causing absenteeism? Where is absenteeism centrally located? Is there one or two specific shifts or capabilities or divisions where it's actually on the increase? And so start to unpack and get some insights back and trying to solve for that problem, as opposed to wanting to go to town and really build a fully fledged end-to-end solution.
Thanks, Jan. I think very practical advice. Thank you again for joining us in the second in our leadership series. Today we spoke to Dr. Jan van Niekerk, who shared his insights into how leaders can leverage people data analytics to enhance organizational performance. Please join us again for our third in the series on leadership.